Hi everyone, my name's Matt, and over the past few years, the market has been flooded with tons of mini PCs, and while they've seemed interesting, basically all of them have had some major drawbacks that made them not really worth it for a PC gamer like myself. That is until I heard about this guy, the Beelink GT Ultra. This addresses one of the biggest issues with these mini PCs, which is that you normally would only be able to have about 4 PCIe lanes of bandwidth for adding a graphics card, but this GT Ultra has a full-size PCIe slot providing an 8x connection, and this interfaces with Beelink's new EX Docking Station to create one of the highest bandwidth and most elegant eGPU setups on the market today. The GT Ultra starts at about $640 with the bundle including the mini PC and docking station coming in at a starting price of $740. That price goes all the way up to $920 for the model I'm featuring today, or $1,020 for the PC and dock bundle. Inside of the box, you get the PC itself along with a power cable and HDMI cable. Something you may notice is this doesn't come with a power brick, and that's because this guy actually has an internal power supply, which I think is awesome and is something we'll be taking a look at once we open this machine up. This GT Ultra uses an aluminum shell and is about 1.5 liters in volume with both metric and imperial dimensions on the screen now. So it's not the smallest mini PC ever, but it's still very compact when taking into account what's inside. Speaking of what's inside, this PC is rocking an Intel Core Ultra 9 185H mobile CPU featuring 16 cores and 22 threads, but it's important to note that only 6 of those 16 cores are performance cores, with the rest being efficiency cores. For graphics, this PC is using the built-in Intel Arc graphics along with an MPU for AI acceleration. This configuration also offers 32GB of dual-channel Crucial DDR5 memory at 5600 MHz, upgradable to a max of 96GB, and a 1TB NVMe Crucial P3 SSD installed in one of the two PCIe Gen 4x4 M.2 slots, and we'll talk about how to access them later in the video. For I/O, on the front we've got a 10GB USB-A port, SD card slot, 10GB USB-C port, 3.5mm audio jack, along with the power button / fingerprint reader combo. On the back is the AC input, one 40GB Thunderbolt 4 USB-C port, another 3.5mm audio jack, HDMI, DisplayPort, 4 more 10GB USB-A ports, and very interestingly, dual 2.5GB LAN ports. On the top is just the Beelink logo, and on the bottom is a plastic ventilated cover with integrated feet and the removable rubber piece to access the PCIe slot. This PC comes with a very clean install of Windows 11, and for general computing tasks, it's very solid to use. Running Cinebench R23, this PC outputs a multi-core score of 15,595 and a single-core score of 1,768. To put this into perspective, it's about the same multi-core performance as a Ryzen 5 7600X. To test the integrated graphics, I ran a few gaming benchmarks to try and gauge what kind of performance the built-in Intel Arc graphics are offering. In a game like Valorant at 1080p low settings, this mini PC put out an impressive 301 FPS average with 1% lows of 130, which is very solid in my opinion and is more than enough for casual play. Fortnite at 1080p with performance mode enabled, 100% resolution scaling, high textures, and high view distance offered a 155 FPS average with lackluster 1% lows of 12. In Elden Ring, out in the open at 1080p low settings, I saw an average of 51 FPS and 1% lows of 38, and I saw slightly better performance in a boss fight area with an average of 55 and 1% lows of 45. This is honestly pretty good for integrated graphics. In Black Myth Wukong, using the free benchmarking tool at the 1080p low settings I was defaulted to, produced a 38 FPS average with 1% lows of 31, which is probably not what most people would consider playable. Finally, in Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p low settings, the system output a 47 FPS average with 1% lows of 37, and hopping in game just driving around produced a 43 FPS average with 1% lows of 30. Also while gaming, I never saw the temperature of the CPU/iGPU go above 81 degrees, and noise-wise it was audible, but not what I would consider annoying. Overall, this gaming performance is pretty decent for integrated graphics, but I think wouldn't be enough performance for most people, including myself, and that's where the EX Docking Station comes into play. It's $160 if you buy it by itself, but if you buy it with a GT Ultra mini PC, it only is about $100. At the $100 bundled price, I think this is a very solid value. It has a full-size PCIe slot on top that, combined with the internal 600 watt power supply, can handle pretty much any graphics card, with the only limitations being the dual 8-pin PCIe power connectors and support for only dual slot brackets. So for example, a triple slot bracket card like this one that requires 3 8-pin connectors isn't going to work with this dock out of the box. The PCB that plugs into the mini PC actually includes not only a 16x portion, which is electrically 8x, but also an additional 1x portion for either an extra NVMe drive in the dock, or you can swap the drive slot for an M.2 Wi-Fi card slot, and the dock itself has built-in antenna ports. Also, there's a random USB 2 port here as well. To use the dock, you first simply insert your graphics card into the 16x slot and secure it using the included bracket and screws. Then you can plug it into the PCIe power connectors. With that done, you can take the mini PC, remove the PCIe slot cover, and slide it onto the dock. Once fully inserted, you can secure the PC with the included bracket and plug everything in. You have to power on the dock first, then turn on the PC, and it should boot right up, but now using the external graphics card. The graphics card I'm testing with is an RTX 4070 Ti Super, which is the most powerful card I have that would work with this dock. To test out the capabilities of this setup, I ran a few of the same benchmarks I did earlier, but instead of at 1080p low settings, I cranked things up to 4K. Starting with Cyberpunk at 4K using the high preset, the setup was able to output a 76 FPS average with 1% lows of 25, which is definitely amazing performance, but I was surprised at the 1% lows. I thought they'd be a little bit higher than that. In Black Myth Wukong at 4K high settings with DLSS set to quality and frame generation turned off, this setup output a solid 68 FPS average with 1% lows of 53, which again is amazing performance. Finally, back in Elden Ring, I tested at 4K high settings with medium ray tracing and saw a 55 FPS average with 1% lows of 42. Overall, the performance of this mini PC and 4070 Ti Super combo is great, but it definitely has me wondering how it would perform against a similarly priced ITX PC, because for the same price of this mini PC, dock, and GPU, you can build a 7800X 3D based ITX build with the same GPU, and if you guys would want to see that comparison, I can do it in a future video if there's enough interest. To get inside of the dock is very simple, and populating the M.2 slot is easy, but to get into the mini PC itself to access the RAM and M.2 slots, it was definitely a bit of a journey, which I'll show you right now. To get into this thing, I think I have to remove 4 screws that are under these 4 screw covers, and I don't know if you can tell, but I've already tried to remove them, and these little rubber pieces are super annoying. I am destroying these plastic pieces. Oh, there we go, 1 out. 2 out, 3 out. There we go, finally. Let me see, are these just, yeah, they're just Phillips head screws. So I will try a number 0 Phillips head. Let's see. And 4, there we go. Now I believe I should be able to just lift up on this tab, and yeah, now we are in. So right here is a dust filter, so I'm assuming that intake is through this bottom panel and then exhaust is out the back, which is interesting. To remove this dust filter, it looks like there are 4 more Phillips head screws. Now let's see, this dust cover should just lift away. And the first things that we can see are the 145 watt, I believe it is, power supply, along with the built-in speakers. This also gives us a better look at the PCIe slot, which looks like a full-size PCIe slot next to a 1X. And then, will this just lift out? Is there another screw I'm missing? I could do the unthinkable and consult the manual, but... Alright, 1 second, let me get the manual. I can't find where I put the manual, but I believe the only thing holding this in anymore is this post right here, which I should be able to get with one of these like hex standoff bits. Let's see. So let's see, 4mm is too small, but 5mm is too big. Well, this is frustrating. I've got a few standard and metric sockets that might work. This is a 3/16. It is 3/16 of an inch. Interesting. Again, I'm not sure if this is the correct way to open this up, but I can't really see any other way to do it. All right, it is loose now, and finally we have access to our 2 RAM sticks, to our M.2 SSD, M.2 Wi-Fi, along with what looks like an extra PCIe 4x4 M.2 slot. Alright, so to access the RAM and the NVMe storage, I needed to pull out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 screws, which is kind of a lot. Again, you're not going to be changing this out all the time, but I do think that's a little excessive to be able to access that kind of stuff. Along with the fact that this weird standoff, it's like 4.5mm, or I think I used a 3/16 socket to get it out, and I definitely would have been able to get it out without that socket, which is frustrating. I don't think I'm going to take it apart any further than this just because I don't want to screw it up, but this also gives us a much better look at the PCIe slot, and I wonder if this has a standard pinout, like you could just plug a PCIe device directly into it. As you can see, it was a fair bit more work than I expected to get inside of this mini PC and to access the RAM and M.2 slots, which is definitely one of the drawbacks of this mini PC. With that being said, I think this is the closest any manufacturer's got to creating a mini PC worthy of hardcore PC gamers. Again, the price of this mini PC and dock setup is dangerously close to a 7800 X3D ITX system without a GPU, but that ITX system would be nowhere near as small and portable as this GT Ultra. So what do I think of this GT Ultra mini PC? Well, I think if you're in the market for a mini PC that is compact enough to throw in your bag and carry around, while also allowing you to dock it for maximum gaming performance, then I think this is a very good option. I think as time goes on, we'll begin to see more and more elegant and high bandwidth docking solutions, but for now, I think this is about as good as it gets. My main concerns with this mini PC and dock are 1, how hard it is to access the RAM and M.2 slots, and 2, the long-term durability of the PCIe slot if you plan on plugging and unplugging the PC from the dock frequently. With that being said, I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this PC in the comments section below. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.